we will get on with the main event. First, we're going to hear from Chuck Bargeron. Chuck has been with the University of Georgia for 24 years, where his work focuses on invasive species and information technology. Recently, Chuck has focused on mapping invasive species and tools for early detection and rapid response using EDDMapS and smartphone applications. Chuck has been an invited speaker at over 300 regional and national conferences and has co-authored over 62 journal articles and outreach publications. All right, Chuck, I will stop sharing so you can go ahead and bring up your slides.
I just kind of have to unmute, don't I? All right, thank you, Christy and Lindsay, and I will dive right in after I thank again the NASMA and our sponsors for making this happen again this year. So I'm Chuck Bargeron, the director of the Center for Invasive Species and Ecosystem Health, or Bugwood as we go by, and as our website is, and what we're located in Tifton, Georgia, which is about an hour north of the Florida line. And we are a unit of the University of Georgia that is a collaboration between the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences and the School of Forestry and Natural Resources. And what we focus on is outreach and using information technology and partnerships to really solve problems in a very practical way. Our team at the university, Joe LaForest is the associate director, Rebecca Wallace is the EDDMapS program coordinator, Selena McAllister, both of which you're going to hear from today. Selena McAllister helps us keep the books going, and then we have a team of programmers and specialists that help make everything that you're going to see today possible. And we really could not do this without this great team. As well as our extensive partners through the years that have helped fund and make EDDMapS possible. So thanks to all of them who have contributed and helped make this a free tool available to everyone. All right, so I'm going to give a brief overview of what EDDMapS is, assuming most of you know it, but we'll start off with that, kind of give an update of where things are and some recent updates to the website, and then kind of look at what we're going to talk about today. So EDDMapS, the name came from the concept that it really did two things. It was for early detection. It was an early detection EDR system, as well as a tool for distribution mapping. And so when we talk about EDDMapS, we talk about the entire system, which includes the real-time tracking of invasive species and pest occurrences, local as well as national distribution maps, having a tool for electronic, easy early detection reporting, as well as the vast library of pictures and information included in the resources at the center. So why did we create EDDMapS? So we were trying to solve problems of where these species found across the United States and Canada. And by doing that, we needed to make it very easy to report things, and we needed to also help build the awareness of the public to the problem of invasive species, because you're never going to get somebody to report something if they don't know that this is a problem they should be looking at. And then to help partners on the ground level have a tool where they can not have to think about the technology. They don't have to think about somebody managing their data, but being able to have everything they need in one package to solve that problem. And then being able to take that local level and zoom out and see at a landscape level, or see at a continental level where these species are found, and then have that as the basis of which other tools can be built. And we're going to see a lot of that through the different presentations today. EDDMapS data is focused on occurrences of species or lack of occurrences of species. And when we talk about what data goes into EDDMapS, it's really the who, what, where, when, why, and how much. And so it's very simple. There's a lot of other fields, obviously, but that's the core of what the data needs to be. And then once that data is entered, it's going through the processes of early detection and rapid response. You know, who has jurisdiction of where this was reported? You know, what was submitted actually correctly identified? And then what are our response options after that comes in? And then we wanted the data to be as accessible as possible. So this data is all publicly available unless there's some special privacy concerns around it, and in a standardized format where it can be easily incorporated into other applications, into models, into other tools. And once we kind of got that foundation built, then we wanted to think about different user groups and build different tools that focus for different user groups. And you're going to see a lot of that today as we talk about these different tools. A little bit of history. EDDMapS started around 2005 when the website was launched. In 2011, the first reporting app came out, which was I've Got One, which focused on Florida initially. Then we continued to build regional applications, the first one being in the Western United States. And those tools were really geared toward the public. Then we moved toward EDDMapS Pro, more professional tools, more things for specifically county weed managers and others to be able to use in the field to manage the data in the area that they manage. In 2021, we launched the EDDMapS app, which is moving toward being the replacement of the regional apps into one system where it's easier to maintain and upgrade over time. And so throughout this year, we're going to be retiring some of those regional apps. And then you've got the, just to kind of think about the components of EDDMapS, it's the EDDMapS website, it's the EDDMapS app, which is more of the general user tool. Then the EDDMapS Pro tool that's got a lot of features to help manage that. And then the education and outreach part of EDDMapS. So this summit, the tools we have available, the archive of data, of presentations from previous summits, publications, presentations that are all there. So you, if you're training other people, can take that information and then use it yourself to help train others. A little bit of statistics. I'm a numbers guy. I like looking at the data. We've got right at 7.5 million records now. About 5.6 million of those have a lat long associated with them. The other about 2 million records are just at the county level. We've got 127,000 users registered within EDDMapS, of which about 40,000 of those have submitted, or 40,000 of those accounts have submitted data or used the system in some way. Most of what's recorded in EDDMapS are plants, and there's more species of plants recorded in EDDMapS than the other taxa, and you can see those numbers there. And as of a few weeks ago, EDDMapS reporters, when time has been logged, have logged over 21,000 hours of collecting invasive species occurrences. And here's just a look at some of the top data sources: Forest Service data set, and then some state databases, as well as the data from USDA plants and BOTA of North America. When you talk about data and you talk about databases, there's different types of databases when you talk about occurrences. And so, what we're trying to do with EDDMapS and the Wild Spotter platform we're going to talk about later is really have a national coverage, actually US and Canadian wide, of all taxa with all the appropriate tools that you need related to invasive species. And so there's other platforms, USGS's non-indigenous aquatic species database. A great tool is focused and limited to aquatics. GBIF, which is a data aggregation platform for all occurrences, both invasive and non-invasive. Awesome tools, a lot of power for that tool. But again, you don't have some of the additional features that you have in the EDDMapS system. iNaturalist, built for biodiversity data, so you also do not have some of the features that you would need if you're using this to manage invasive species data. But there is a good place for iNaturalist, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. We recently looked, you've got 40,000 users who have reported something. You've also got users who have signed up for alerts or verifiers. And so we looked at what our active users by year have been, and we like this, these are anybody who did something during that year. So, sometimes you're going to have people that do things multiple years, but it's good to look at this and see the steady growth over time. So just to kind of sum up what is EDDMapS, we built this to be this ultimate aggregator, but also tools at every level. And then now we're really focusing on how to use the data. And that's what you're going to see a lot in the presentations today. Quick overview of what this last year's looked like. We've averaged about 520 records per day. That's a 10% increase from last year. We're also seeing an increase in the total reporters, as well as a fairly large increase in the number of revisits this last year. Here's where the data that was entered in the last year has come from, which is a good speckling around the US and Canada, and obviously some of the larger county areas are going to have more reports just from the size. This to me is really great because we're not just seeing positive reports anymore. We're seeing more negative reports. We're seeing reports that are being marked as treated and eradicated. So that revisit concept and telling a better story is really getting out there in the last couple of years. Still getting a good amount of data from the smartphone apps, as well as using the web forms to enter the data. And as I mentioned previously, overall throughout EDDMapS, about 70% of the data in EDDMapS is plant related, and then it's insects, wildlife, and plant pathogens. Of all the reports submitted to EDDMapS, about 97% of those have been verified. So we've got this great network of now 942 verifiers that work with us, many of which are on the summit today. And these are the folks that look at the records and make sure what was reported is what it is, and then makes that information public through the EDDMapS system. Looking at the last year, by reports and revisits by state, a good steady amount from most of the states that have really been implementing this, and then with the work that Utah has done with their grant program, as well as with their revisits, obviously a large spike there compared to some of the other areas. And then this is overall. So overall, there was a lot of pest data that have gone in recently from New Jersey, as well as Florida. And then with the incorporation of the data from CalFlora from California, you've got a large amount of data from those states, and then some of the other states that we're seeing the more recent information as well. And then this kind of tells that story even better, breaking it up by taxa, being able to look and see, okay, well, New Jersey, there's a lot of data, but a lot of that is insect data. And so there's definitely a comparison there and where and how the data is being included. And then Canada, just looking at the provinces in Canada, a lot of plant data and some wildlife data in Alberta, some activity in other provinces, and then Ontario, where there's a lot of plant data, but then some wildlife and insect information as well. I want to do a shout out to Alberta. They've really done a lot of promotion in the last year, and gone from 750 new reports coming in 2021 to over 4,000 reports coming in 2022, and now that is covering 614,000 acres of infested acres in Alberta. And so a great jump in their data in the last year with a good marketing campaign. I mentioned 97% of the data has been verified. This is kind of showing where the holes in that data are. There's a database that is the Midwest Invasive Species Information Network that shares data with EDDMapS, but their data is not verified. So that's where a lot of this Michigan data is, and also a good chunk of the unverified data is sitting in that data set. And we're trying to find a verifier that will help us go through that data and turn that data into verified reports. Not only, we talk about reports coming in and all, but the EDDMapS website also gets a significant amount of traffic coming into it on an annual basis. And over the last, whatever that is, 7 or 8 years, we have data through Google Analytics. There's been about 8 million page views from about 1.6 million users. And I think that shows there's an interest and a need for this kind of data and being able to have it all in one place. Some of the other things that, there's 40,000 people with accounts in EDDMapS, only less than 2,000 of them have signed up for alerts. And so I would encourage you, if you're interested in finding out when new things are reported in your area, sign up for an account, go to My EDDMapS, go to user alerts, and you can sign up for what you're interested in. But we've sent 271,000 of those emails since February of 2020, as well as 65,000 verifier emails since September of 2021. So some recent updates. The next presentation is going to go more into EDDMapS Pro, but we continue to spend a lot of time on the EDDMapS Pro interface, integrating things like photo projects where you can take good before and after pictures. I think this example with the fan really shows that as much as anything, how you can line it up, the previous picture, and get really good before and after pictures of projects. Project areas, which is a little confusing, so they're going to be renamed as boundary areas, but a way that you can upload a KML file into the app and be able to see, boundary of the project you're working on while you're out doing the work. And then we've recently added a way to do a walk or a drive the polygon, and Jerry and Kevin are going to talk about that more in the next presentation. For EDDMapS Pro, there's a good series of short videos on how to get started, how to do different features within EDDMapS Pro that I would encourage you to check out. All of those are available on the EDDMapS website under Tools and Training. Some other updates to the EDDMapS Pro. We've added a way where you can jump to a record. So if you know the record ID, you can type in that record ID and jump to it on the map, jump to the boundary areas similarly. A way to better look at data on the iOS for stacked points, an auto upload option, so you don't have to remember to upload your records at the end of the day, as well as upload reminders. Some new ways to do projects within EDDMapS Pro. A walk to polygon feature I just mentioned, and then a way to bulk download those images from your photo projects. We're looking at how some of these newer features in EDDMapS Pro have been used. 120 different users have used the boundary areas, the project areas features. 1,200 users have generated different data packages, and there's been 18,000 of those data packages generated. And then we're going to talk more about saved queries, but there's already been 135 users created 391 saved queries, as well as 981 photos as part of the photo projects. We've started getting good emails from Apple that really help us be able to monitor use as well as any crashes on the apps. And so here's an example of what we get on a weekly basis from Apple. So we know how many people saw the app in the App Store, how many new downloads there were in that past week, how many people used the app, opened the app, that's what the sessions are, and then if there were any crashes, what those were. And then we're getting crash reports emailed to Jordan, our iPhone programmer. So if you get a response to an email like this, it's probably because something happened with the app, and this email goes to Jordan. He gets all the information on what's wrong, and usually can walk you through a solution as the issue is being fixed. Along those lines, something we're going to be adding soon is a progress bar when we're doing those uploads, so you'll be able to see what record is being uploaded and what the progress of that is, just in case you have bad cell coverage or something that's causing it to be slow. Another feature that we haven't talked very much previously in these summits about is the literature reporting tool. This is a feature we built so we can take a map that's been put together like this of where beech leaf disease is, and then take that with proper citation and incorporate that data into EDDMapS. So then the users can track that data in EDDMapS, but then it gives the citation here to where the data originally came from. Another thing that I think is really great about the way we built the reporting forms is they can be embedded in your websites. And so Washington Invasive Species Council, they have a smartphone app, but they also on their website have incorporated the EDDMapS reporting form. If you're logged into EDDMapS, when you go there, it knows who you are. If you're not logged in, it asks for some simple information when you're submitting the form. And then it handles that in the reporting process. So something that, if you would like the reporting form to be integrated on your agency's website, just reach out to us and we'll be glad to work with you in doing that. And then here's another example where South Carolina Department of Natural Resources is doing a similar thing with incorporating the reporting forms directly on the website. All right, so I mentioned iNaturalist earlier. iNaturalist is a huge citizen science database of about 129 million records now for all over the world. And what we got concerned about was that regulatory or species of concern that we in the invasive species community are interested in get reported to iNaturalist, and we don't have a way to know about them unless you go to iNaturalist and look for them. So we built a way to take the data, query iNaturalist, and say, okay, how many records are there of things that somebody has said are invasive? And so it's about, as of a few weeks ago, 3.7 million records in the US and Canada in iNaturalist that are of species of concern. And so of those, through our verifiers, we've been able to move almost 500,000 of those into EDDMapS. We've been able to ignore about another 300,000 of those just because they were things that the state was not concerned about tracking at the time, or they were native to that part of the country. And so this is a little skewed because the Cal Florida data shows up here as well. So, but this is kind of looking at the different states and where and how much data has come in through iNaturalist. And then if you look at the remaining records in triage, it kind of gives you an idea of where those records exist. This data, again, can be a little bit misleading when you go to this slide and you look at what those are data of. And so, there's some common, some birds that there's not a lot of tracking going on, in the invasive species community of, like Canada goose and European starling. That there's a good chunk of data that we're probably going to go through and clean up some of this data. But there's also some things like tree of heaven and garlic mustard and Phragmites that are things that are actively being worked on in areas. And so, as you're thinking about this, if you're a verifier and whether or not, data should go and be triaged and moved in the EDDMapS, focus on those high priority species to start with. We've enhanced that a good bit lately where you can do county level triage. You also can filter the list by your state list. You can set up email notifications for when the pool comes into EDDMapS. You can filter by taxonomic group, hide species that are native to somewhere in the US, and then also select species and do a bulk action on them. And here's what that interface looks like. So, here's an example of in Georgia, let's just say Chinese privet. There's an additional 661 records. There's already 3,000 records in there. And so you could select those and decide whether you bulk verify them or you send them to the verifiers. I will warn you that there's a couple of issues we've run into with our naturalist data, one of which is for ornamental species. The checkbox of captive cultivated doesn't always get changed to yes. And so even if you look at this picture in the background, that's probably a planted calorie pair with the brick in the background. And so, you know, that this record went through as research grade because it's got two people agreeing on the identification, but it probably shouldn't have, because it's probably a planted calorie pair tree and not an escaped one. The other issue that comes in is coordinates can be set to obscured or to private, and if it's obscured, and you don't notice that when you're looking at it, then it won't be the actual location on the point. So just a few things to keep in mind related to the iNaturalist data. All right, talking about website updates. We continue to add materials to the training materials page. And here's just a look at that page. The summit videos for this year will be added here probably next week once the recording is broken up. All the virtual office hours that we started last year, we've had, what we appreciate is good attendance on this. You know, averaging about 30 or more people each month. Those are on the third Fridays of the month from 11 to 12:30 Eastern, and we will start those again in May of this year. To the dashboard, we recently added a download PowerPoint button here, and that allows you to take all the data on the dashboard and download it into to whatever view you're looking at on your dashboard, the EDDMapS dashboard, that is. Download that data into a PowerPoint file that then you can edit and use to present, you know, in a state report or in a county report. We've added a way to do bulk revisits, and Rebecca's going to talk about this feature later. I mentioned earlier being able to do a download of all the images as part of a photo project. And then downloading data, a quick thing I want to mention on that is saved queries. This is a way that you can create a query, save it, and then rerun it again or download it into EDDMapS Pro and use it that way. So a way you can look for a specific group of information and get that information into EDDMapS Pro. When people think about EDDMapS, usually what they think about is the distribution maps. But I wanted to go through this real quick. For most of the major species, we also have fact sheets related to those species. We have links to other resources. You can see down here on the bottom of the page. We have selected images. We have the distribution maps. We have who lists this species as invasive. What are the sources for that? As well as the full taxonomic ranks, synonyms for it, links to the plants database and other data sets, and then where we got the common name and scientific name for. So for every species in EDDMapS, all of that information is available. What, you know, we look at and talk a lot about the point maps, but there's some unique features of some of the county maps where you can look at the distribution by county. You can also look at density by county. You can look at what is literature reports, what are the old herbarium and plants database reports, and what are observations, and then having the options to look at some models in these as well. And Annette's going to talk about these models and how they work and what this information means at a later presentation today. And to kind of wrap this up, last year we talked about incorporating locations, other geographic locations into the records. And I showed this example of a record in Dinosaur National Monument, and how, you know, now this record, because it is located in that public area, then is credited that way. So what we've now done is made those locations clickable at the bottom of the page. So here's an example of a park outside of in Auburn, Alabama, where you can click on the state park and it takes you to a map that shows you everything within that state park with the boundary surrounding it. You can turn on and off positive, treated, eradicated, and negative records. You can also pull records in a buffer and miles around this area. And then what's really cool at the bottom of the page, you get a list of what species are found. You can download that as a PDF, as an Excel file. I'll show you that in just a second. One thing that's interesting here is, you can look at it and go, okay, well, there's a lot of thorny olive, but then there's also the Agnes records as well. Maybe some of those are actually thorny olive, and a way to kind of look at that data and go, hey, those may need to be fixed, or maybe we just didn't know what species it actually was. Here's an example of one in Minnesota with a congressional district, and then showing the species list and how you can download that as a PDF or as an Excel spreadsheet. And we're going to continue to improve this in the interface for this, where you can get this data in even better ways. This has now been added under database tools, so species status reports by other geographic locations, and you can even go in and see those geographic locations by county or jurisdiction. So in this example, I chose Georgia, I chose Tift County, and then here's a park in Tift County where there's some reports, as well as in this case, I had a 5-mile buffer around it. A few things we're working on related to EDDMapS that are coming soon. We're continuing to improve the educational materials and the training hub. We are updating the advanced query tool. That's something you'll be seeing coming out soon. And then we built a way to help process uploads quicker, and Rebecca's going to talk about that later. We're continuing to update the dashboards, and Aaron's going to show some of the work they've done in Utah around dashboards a little bit later. Looking at data like this example, and I'm not going to run all of this, but this is an example showing really the power of data, going from the 70s into the 80s, into the 2000s, and then to now. When you have this good data set of historical data, the story you can tell about how something started small and has spread from there. Sorry. And then also being able to take that, and here's a recent Python map that was done using EDDMapS data, showing the spread over time with that data. We're continuing to support and build the tools like EDDMapS iBiocontrol, EDDMapS Biocontrol, and there's going to be a new version of the EDDMapS, the iBiocontrol app coming out very soon, and they're going to integrate the recent fact sheets that were developed through NASMA as part of those. So with the agents information as well as with the weed information included in that app. We've talked about the ISM track tool in the past. That's another tool that's continuing to be developed and improved. We're building plugins to make it very easy to incorporate this data into your own website, doing things like drone imagery, taking advantage of new GPS technology as it comes out in the newer iPhones and watches, where you can really get good accuracy, sub-meter, meter accuracy on a phone, on a watch. And then finally, we're looking at ways to incorporate better image recognition, and have done some tests where we're seeing some good results on it being able to look at the species and compare it to existing pictures, and then tell with a pretty good percent probability what it is. We recently had a summit in Utah. I want to thank the people that were able to attend the not summit, but a strategic planning session focused on terrestrial weeds in the Western US, and there'll be a report coming out of that very soon. This slide is for later, but we will be doing a survey at the end of this meeting. We'll put that in the chat. But if you're not going to be on all day and you want to grab this, you can scan the QR code or go to tinyurl.com/EDDMapS23 and take this survey at the end of the day. So we've got a great lineup for talks. I'm a minute over, so I'm going to speed through this. But if you can stick around or view some of these later, there's a good lineup of some of the different ways EDDMapS is being used across the country, with some really interesting examples. So thank y'all for joining us today. And remember that, everything we're talking about is available for y'all to use and to help solve your problems on the ground. So thank you very much. And there's my email address if you have questions, and we'll be answering those in the chat as well.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Chuck.